Good morning, everybody. My name is Ron Banks. I'm the Director of Strategic Persistence Initiatives at Lehman College and one of the members of the Bronx Transfer Affinity Group, also known as BTAG. I'd like to thank you all for attending our final Transfer Tuesday session of the 2025-2026 academic year. Just a reminder about what BTAG is. BTAG is a collaboration between Bronx, Hostos, Gutman, and BMCC, as well as Lehman, CUNY Central, and the Bronx Opportunity Network. Primary goals: facilitating the transfer of students, creating a graduation habit at all of the colleges, and helping to build relationships between faculty and staff across all of the institutions. Today's Transfer Tuesday session is being led by Rocio Rayo from Hostos. She's the Director of Transfer Services. Samantha Maldonado wasn't able to make it today because of a last-minute meeting at Hostos, but she was very involved in preparing the data and the research that Rocio is going to share with you. The title of today's session is Following the Transfer, Tracking Hostos Graduates Across CUNY. And before I hand it over to Rocio, just a couple of notes about what the schedule for today is going to look like. Rocio is going to walk through the data and the process, and it'll take about a half an hour. Please feel free to put questions in the chat. Denny, our guru of all things related to Zoom, will be consolidating those and will lead the Q&A session. You can also take yourself off mute during the Q&A session to ask questions directly as well. Without any further ado, Rocio.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Thanks for making the time. May is always a moment where you can sort of see the finish line, but you're not quite sure how you're going to make it over it, at least for myself. Thanks, Ron, for the introduction. Again, my name is Rocio Rayo. I'm the Director of Transfer Services at Hostos, and what we're going to be going through today is not a standard dashboard walkthrough. What you're going to see is what longitudinal cohort tracking looks like when we sit with student records, student by student, for the years after they graduate. So what we're going to see doesn't appear in any single institutional report, at least none that I have access to. And it exists because we built it ourselves. And the reason we built it is because you don't know what you don't know when you first start a position. And so in fall 2022, when I took over this office, I knew I wanted data and I knew that the data was accessible, but I wasn't exactly sure what data I needed, how to get it. And so this is an example of an iterative approach to collecting data. I'm going to move through 23 slides, and there's a lot here. And so please write questions in the chat, like Ron said, jot questions down, because I do want to have a bulk of our time at the end unpacking my process, if that's interesting to you, unpacking how I sort of assembled and the analysis of the data, the raw data that we collected, and then also sort of like what this means moving forward, the so what. So there's 4 threads that run through this session. Destination institutions, where do Hostos transfer students actually go, and where do they thrive, where do they stall, and where do they convert at the lowest rates? Major to degree pathways. So how do AA, AS, and AAS degrees translate into bachelor's completion or workforce entry? Credit transferability, the procedural friction that students hit that costs them degrees that they've essentially earned. This is reverse transfer. Students at Hostos, whose Hostos associate's degree is essentially waiting for them for credits they've already taken at 4-year colleges. And if you take nothing else from this, I would like this to be a big sort of point that I'm trying to make. Standard transfer reports flatten out all four of these stories into one number. And that number is wrong almost every time. So here's how we're tracking students across time. We're looking at four cohorts, fall 2022 and spring 2023, a full academic year of transfer students. And these are students who applied to graduation. And so we are taking them as a cohort because these are students who they applied to graduation. So there was a thought in their head at some point in either one of these semesters that they were going to graduate. The next cohort we're taking is fall 2023. And we're really going to focus there on reverse transfer students. So of that fall 2023 cohort, we don't have a lot of bachelor's completions yet from that cohort, but we do have a lot of students who have completed 90 plus credits. And so how can we look at that credit accumulation? And we found 24 students who did not get their Hostos degree conferred, are still enrolled, and or have completed over 96 credits. And then we're going to look at our most recent cohort of fall 2025 to see how many of those graduate applications transitioned into transfer applications and how many of those transfer applications transitioned into actual enrollments. So each one of these cohorts could look successful or could look like a failure based on the numbers, based on what you're looking for. So for example, we might see that at a transfer point, we lost 14%, 13.9% to stop out at a senior college. But if we look a little bit more carefully and we do a call campaign, we see that actually 76 of those were allied health majors who went directly into a workforce, either in dental hygiene, rad tech, or in nursing. And why they said maybe they're not ready to apply to transfer right now, in that moment, they are working full time. So again, standard reporting flattens out both the success of our transfer students, but also the reasons why folks might have stopped. So where transfer sticks and where they fall apart. This is one of the clearest findings in the whole deck, and I want to spend a minute on it. 81 of our spring 23 cohorts have already earned their bachelor's degree. 67 transferred to a 4-year college and then stopped out. If we plot where each group ended up, we see something that the aggregate numbers hide. So for example, Lehman, 40 graduated and earned their bachelor's, but 29 stopped out. So there's a 58% stick rate. That's a huge volume. Lehman is doing the work for our students. Thank you, Lehman. Now look at John Jay. 16 graduated and only 5 stopped out. That's a 76% stick rate. That's our gold number right there. Down next, to SPS. There were 13 students who transferred in total. 3 finished with their bachelor's and 10 stopped out. 23% stick rate. It's the inverse of John Jay. It's our same students coming from Hostos, but depending on where they're going, they're having a different stop out rate. So I'm not saying SPS caused anyone to stop out, but what I'm saying is that where people go matters for a bunch of different reasons. And we don't always use that current information when we help students figure out where they're going next, or when we advise students about where they should go. And that's the destination view at the aggregate level. But there's another pattern that shows up when you track individual students through multiple semesters. Across all 6 cohort trackers, we maintain, that's fall 2022 through spring 2025, we've documented 36 students who start first at a 4-year transfer, but didn't stay there. So Hostos to a 4-year to another institution. That's not in any report that I can pull from CUNY institutional research. But if we look at that, Lehman is on both sides of that. 9 students left Lehman for somewhere else, but 11 students arrived at Lehman from somewhere else. The same school, And the most common place students both don't stick and end up as a landing place, the gravity well of the Hostos transfer ecosystem. The most frequent pathway, CCNY to Lehman, has 3 students. Baruch to Lehman, 3 students. Lehman to Hunter, 3 students. Lehman to BMCC, 3 students. These are real patterns. They're not just one-offs. They're not just anecdotes. And then there's a number on the right. 5 students moved from Hostos to BMCC, and 2 students moved from Hostos to BCC. I want to be precise about what this is and what this isn't, because this is a conversation I've had with faculty and with some advisors, that this is not reverse transfer. When folks move from a 4-year college to a 2-year college, when I say reverse transfer, I'm not defining it in that way. Reverse transfer in the way I'm defining it is that when a student transfers without earning their Hostos associate's degree, they can earn it retroactively by transferring credits back from a senior college. Many of y'all already know this, but I have been shocked at the amount of meetings I have been in where I've had to define it. However, what we're looking at right here in this slide is something different. This is students leaving 4-year colleges and re-enrolling at a community college. And it's a real pattern and flow. And it has nothing to do with credit recognition. It has to do, in the people that we've reached out with community building and placement. And one person even described it as finding their new home. Now that you've seen the destination patterns at the aggregate and individual level, I want to go back to the cohort that anchors this analysis. Spring 2023. There were 481 students who applied for graduation in spring 2023. We've been tracking them for about 3 years, and here's the breakdown. The gray bar at the top, 205 students have stopped after Hostos. 16.8% of these students have earned their bachelor's degree. 81 students with an average of GPA of 3.4. 20.8% are still enrolled at a 4-year institution as of spring 2026, and 50 of those have 100 and plus credits. So bachelor's completion is realistic for those students at the end of this semester and maybe into the summer. The 76 number at the bottom right, those are folks that we have been in touch with, that we've spoken to on the phone, who have told us they are not interested in transferring, but they also made it clear that it wasn't a stop out, it was a workforce entry. That's language that I'm using, that's not language that they use, but it was very clear and honest in conversations with them that they were happy. They made they gained employment. They are working full time. They are doing what they want, and it was really wonderful to talk to some of these students who started at Hostos with a goal, graduated, and are now attained it. And so these are credentialed professionals. However, in many reports, it does look like they have stopped out. So that categorization is a choice, and it has real consequences for how we talk about cohort outcomes. We'll come back to this in a few slides when we look at who actually stopped versus who we should be pursuing. But let's drill into where the bachelor's recipients went. 81 graduates, 11 different institutions. Lehman alone produced 40 of them. That's 49% of all of our spring 23 bachelor's recipients came out of Lehman. John Jay is 16, mostly criminal justice majors flowing through that established articulation. CCNY has 12, and that's our top graduate school destination too, because of their BA, MA programs. Everyone else, all other institutions, have a combined 15 students. This concentration matters because when we have a Lehman partnership question, we're not talking about a marginal pipeline. We're talking about half of our outcomes. And when something happens at John Jay's admission processing and transfer admission processing in particular, we're losing students who would otherwise finish there in criminal justice. Knowing the concentration is the first step in protecting it. And where they ended up tells us one thing, but where they started at Hostos tells us how to advise the next cohort. So All 81 Spring 23 bachelor's recipients here are grouped by their Hostos major. The dominant story here is the 27 at the bottom, liberal arts. Criminal justice at 13 is the next biggest, and then community health at 10. Together, those three majors produce 60% of our bachelor's completers. Look at the right side. The average time to a bachelor's after transferring from Hostos is 23.8 months, under 2 years. The median is 24 months, and the range goes from under 18 months to over 30. The bottom card shows the distribution. 47 students finished in 18 to 24 months. That is fast. Now I want to flag something about the liberal arts folks specifically. This is our biggest pipeline, but it also fans out the widest. And we'll take a look at that in the next slide. Here's what those 27 liberal arts students actually did after they transferred. 27 students started out at liberal arts and Hostos, and they earned bachelor's degrees in 15 different fields. The biggest concentrations are in psych with 6 and sociology/social work at 5. Speech pathology, English, health services admin, and criminology each had 2. After that, it's all one student each. One Latin American studies, one computer science, actuarial science, which is something to do with math, I learned yesterday, accounting, business admin, and media communications. And let's be honest about what this means. Liberal arts is doing its job as a flexible pathway. Students are using it to get where they want to go. But the flexibility is a little bit of a coin flip, because when a student says, I'm in liberal arts and I want to study computer science, we don't have a script for that. The pathway is unstructured by design. Compared to what's next, where I'll show you what a one-to-one articulation looks like. These are the majors that map clearly and the ones that don't. 4 boxes here, and there's 2 real stories. The top left, criminal justice, 13 graduates, 24 months average to bachelor completion. 9 of them earned a criminal justice BS at John Jay. The pathway is direct, the articulation is obvious, the script writes itself. The top right, nursing, AAS, 4 graduates, all 4 stayed in nursing. SPS, RN to BS is the dominant route. Again, very clean. Bottom left, community health, 10 graduates, 27-month average. Most stayed in health-adjacent fields, health services admin, health science, public health. 2 pivoted to sociology/psychology at Hunter and Lehman. There's a little bit of flexibility, but it's a pretty clear articulation. But then the bottom right, early childhood education, AAS. 8 graduates, 0 stayed in early childhood as their primary major, and none of them stayed in education as their primary major. They pivoted completely. Sociology, psychology, disability studies, Spanish. So our early childhood AAS is functioning as a pre-sociology degree in practice, and we don't talk about it that way at all. So if we're advising early childhood education students, should we be starting the conversation at, you're probably going to have to pivot, and let's plan that pivot now? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that would make a student feel, and I'm not sure how much chairs and coordinators would like that. But it's the reality, and it's something we have to deal with. So far, we've been focused on spring 2023. I want to show you that these are not one cohort patterns. In fall 2022, we have 26 graduates, bachelor's completers. The story holds. Fall 2022 had a 29-month average time to bachelor's compared to the 24 for spring 23, but fall 2022 has 6 more months of data, so it's catching the slower finishers. The average graduating GPA for fall 2022 is 3.34. The average graduating GPA for spring 23 is 3.43, both well above 3.0. And look at the top destination, Lehman, 54% of fall 22 grads, 49% of spring 23 grads. The pattern doesn't shift. On the right, the major mix is also familiar. Psych, criminal justice, health admin, business. The full distribution looks remarkably similar to spring 23. Liberal arts is the dominant feeder, allied health is workforce bound, and Lehman is dominant. If someone tells you my spring 23 data is an anomaly, we can hand them this slide. Now I want to come back to a question we've left hanging. Who actually stopped? 205 spring 23 students are categorized as stopped after Hostos. That was that gray bar that we saw earlier. But let's look at who they are by major. 42 are liberal arts, 37 are dental hygiene, 21 are x-ray, 16 early childhood, dental hygiene, x-ray nursing, and LPN students. Those 76 allied health AAS graduates. As I said, I don't think categorizing them as stopped is a fair assessment of where they are in their professional and educational trajectory. They are credentialed healthcare workers earning a living right now. If we reframe that count, there are 129 students in transfer-oriented majors who actually stopped without transferring. Those are the students that I want to continue to pursue. This is the single most important categorization change. I want to stop lumping in stopped at community college. I want to stop lumping in dental hygienist with the liberal arts student. They are in really different positions, and they have really different solutions. So let's look at where the pipeline actually breaks for the students that we do want to pursue. This is the fall 2025 cohort, our latest data. 208 graduation applicants in fall 2025. 160 were reachable and interested in transfer. 150 actually applied to a four-year institution, and 97 enrolled in a four-year institution. 64.7% conversion from application to enrollment. But there's a leak here. 20.2% were unreachable or not interested. This means emails got kicked back, phone numbers were incorrect in CUNY first. Or we called them and they said, we are not interested. That's an outreach problem. That's something that we necessarily don't have the capacity to help fix. However, 35.3% applied and didn't enroll. That's 53 students. That's a friction point that we do have leverage over. They wanted to go, they started the paperwork, but something happened between submitting their application and enrolling in their classes. When we ask ourselves where the bottleneck is, this is the bottleneck. 53 students in one cohort. If we get even half of them enrolled and enrolled again and enrolled maybe 3 more times, that's 26 additional bachelor's completions. And the conversion isn't uniform. Some majors transfer cleanly and others do not. Computer science, 100% conversion from application to enrollment. Business management, 93% conversion from application to enrollment. Community health, 90% conversion from application to enrollment. These pathways have clear articulations, strong advising scripts, and they're recognized senior college home. The students know where they're going. But let's look at the bottom. Early childhood, 46%. Criminal justice, only 50. And 8 of those students were stuck at applied at John Jay. Liberal arts, 62%. 19 students applied and didn't enroll. Conversion gaps cluster when next steps requires a student-driven understanding of an articulation. This doesn't mean that the academic program at Hostos is weak. This is where the procedural lift is the heaviest. Early childhood education students aren't unprepared. They are at the application step and they don't know where to go next. Before we look at who stops, let's look at why they stop, because the credit transferability data we pulled this fall is telling. This is the slide that reframes everything we just talked about. 332 Hostos transfers were audited over the summer and then reassessed this last fall after census closed. The question we asked is, when our students transfer, do their credits actually count towards their bachelor's degree major? Yes or no? Across the whole cohort, 44% were yes. All of their credits transferred towards their major. 56% of the credits did not apply to the receiving college's degree program. That's not credits being denied. That's credits being accepted, but flagged as not applicable to their bachelor's degree major. Same coursework, no graduation value. Look at Lehman. 37% clean transfer. Lehman is half of our bachelor's completions and the lowest clean transfer rate of any of our high volume receiving institutions. Baruch is 22%. 22? Only 6 of 27 Hostos students lost credit applicability at Baruch on transfer. The phrase did not apply to degree appears in this dataset 332 times across the rejection narratives. That's the structure of the problem. Senior colleges are not telling our students no, they're saying yes, and then saying, but that part doesn't count. And the pattern is even starker when we look by major. Same 332 students, regrouped by their starting Hostos major. This is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable. Look at the third bar from the top, business management. 2 of our 27 students transferred credits cleanly, 7%. And the one with no Navy bar at all, accounting, 0 of 15. Every single accounting student in this cohort lost credit applicability. Not most of them, every single one. Look at criminal justice at 40%. Earlier in this deck, I told you criminal justice is the cleanest pathway story we have. 69% of criminal justice graduates earned a criminal justice BS at John Jay. At the graduation level, that story holds. At the credit level, it's a 40% transfer rate. Every clean pathway claim we make is provisional on the receiving college's evaluation of credits. And I want to be specific. This is not the student's fault. There's nothing wrong with the academic preparation. The articulation just isn't there. The course catalogs do not match. This is structural, and good news for us, this is fixable. Here's where it becomes actionable. The left side ranks the Hostos courses that got flagged as not applicable to the degree, most often across the fall 26 cohort. Bio 111, Intro to Bio Lab, 31 rejections. Math 150, Pre-Calc, 28 rejections. HLT 103, Interpersonal Relationships, 21 rejections. Bio 240, Anatomy and Physiology 2, 17 rejections. Together, Bio 111 and Math 150 account for 59 of the 186 total rejection events in this cohort. 2 course codes, nearly a third of the credit loss in our data. And these aren't obscure electives. You have to take the Bio 111 lab as part of our introductory science sequence. And quantitative reasoning courses like Math 150 exist at every senior college under similar names. 61 times in this data set, a Hostos credit was filed as regular liberal arts, not applicable to degree. 39 times it was filed as math and quantitative reasoning, not applicable. 33 times laboratory liberal arts, not applicable. The senior college is recognizing the academic content. It's just not mapping the course to the student's degree requirements. The advocacy implication is concrete. The articulation work on 5 or 6 course codes, Bio 111, Math 150, HLT 103, HLT 124, Bio 240, could shift the entire credit transfer picture for the cohort. It's not policy reform and it's not a new system. It's just catalog to catalog course mapping. No big deal. We can do it. Now that we know why students stall, let's look at who stalled. Students with the credits, ready to finish, but they stopped. 1 semester away. 8 spring 23 transfer students. All 8 have 100 plus credits at this senior college. 4 have GPAs over a 3.0. They're not academically lost. They're not unable to do the coursework, but they stopped enrolling. 101.5 credits, 3.85. 100 credits, 3.813. 109 credits, 3.243. These are not borderline cases. These are students who are essentially done, but stopped. When we spoke to them, all 3 of them indicated this was a financial aid issue. These last 8 are high priority candidates for re-enrollment outreach. Can we do credit for prior learning / CLEP? Can we have emergency funding? Is there a course substitution that they might qualify for? We have the leverage here, but someone has to reach out to them from these four-year colleges to help them get them over this last hurdle. Let's look at the inverse case, students who didn't graduate from Hostos and are still being tracked. This is our fall 23 non-completers, 2 years later. This is what I call the reverse transfer slide. 24 students applied to graduate from Hostos in fall 23, and they did not meet the graduation requirements. 2 years later, here's where they are in 5 distinct buckets. 2 students have completed their bachelor's without ever receiving their Hostos AA. This is a process step. They're ready for degree review today. 5 students are at the senior college right now with sufficient credits to meet Hostos AA requirements. Several are just missing maybe 1 or 2 credits. They are canonical reverse transfer cases. 5 are very close to completion. They stopped out, so they're not currently enrolled. But there's a 4.0 student that's only missing 9 credits. Let's get them in somewhere. Let's get them graduated. And 9 cases are a little bit more complex, where they really should be changing their major to liberal arts, because when they change their major from liberal arts, their degree work's percentage towards completion goes up pretty astronomically. 24 non-completers, 2 years out, 15 of them, 63%, could be moved and receive their Hostos AA with a few clicks alone. No additional coursework, only action on the institution side. But there's a procedural barrier that's stopping us from acting. I ask this question every single time I see this data. If students have already applied for the Hostos degree, why do we need them to apply again for reverse transfer? The number on the right tells you why this matters. 3 students at 100% degree works completion right now. 5 active reverse transfer students with 96 plus credits. Every opt-in step introduces a new failure point. A form not received, an email not open, a deadline missed. For students 1 credit from completion, the form is the barrier, not the coursework. This is why automatic degree conferral is important. I want to zoom out a bit before I close. Bachelor's completion rate within 3 years of community college graduation has some national figures. We can get them from the CCRC, the Aspen Institute, and the National Student Clearinghouse 2024 report. Nationally, community colleges finish within 3 years after transferring from their community college at 16%. Hispanic students nationally are at 13%. Low-income students are at 11%, and Black students are at 9%. That's the Hostos population. For Hostos in spring 23, we are currently at 16.8%. We're already at the national level. From fall 2022, we're at 28%. And when we add the January graduates for fall 22, we're at 35%. That is roughly double the national benchmark and well above any demographic subgroup that describes most of our student population. I want to be clear about what this means. Our students aren't just finishing, they're finishing strong. Fall 22 average GPA was 3.36. 41% earned honors level GPAs of 3.5 or above. We're doing the work. Transfer services, advising, financial aid, academic departments. We're producing measurably above benchmark outcomes for a population that the national data sets treats as low completion by default. And here's 6 takeaways. Then I'm going to close with one more thing. 6 things. 1, stopped after Hostos includes our allied health graduates that are now healthcare workers. These are different majors and they need a different success metrics. 2, we have to track destinations, not just transfers. Lehman is half of our completions. The pipeline fit explains why some majors convert at 100% and others at 46%. 3, we have to map every major, we have to make sure that every major has a clear pathway. Criminal justice to John Jay works because the articulation is obvious. Early childhood education pivots to a BA in sociology. Students need that pivot named before they get there. We have to surface the 100+ credit stop outs. 8 spring 23 students stopped a semester before a bachelor's degree, and 4 had over a 3.0. But they are invisible in a lot of the standard reporting. We have to treat stop-in steps, particularly for reverse transfer, as friction. Reverse transfer requires so many applications. They're not Hostos students anymore. Each step costs the student. 3 FY23 students are at 100% degree works today, awaiting review. 6, longitudinal tracking is the lever. Fall 2022 hits 28% bachelor's completion, almost twice the national community college average. That outcome is the product of investing in tracking and targeted outreach. Before I take any questions, I just want to close with what longitudinal tracking actually costs. Every cohort number that you've seen today is the product of a student-by-student manual research, hundreds and thousands and billions of clicking in CUNY first. Literally 160 hours of staff time to update 5 graduation cohorts. And we did this last semester, the last time that we did this tracking. We made sure to really see how long it took. 15 minutes per student just to track credits. And that's just one of the 6 questions we ask about each record. There's no dashboard for this. There's no auto refresh. This one, sits with each student. And I'm not saying this to complain. I'm saying this because of what it means. Transfer is a little bit stuck. We sit between 2 institutions, and it's hard for either one to claim. To the community college, a student who transfers might look like attrition, particularly for our retention numbers. They left. To the 4-year school, we're not their staff. We have no standing to follow our students into their advisement offices, their financial aid offices. The work that connects these 2 institutions lives in the gap between them. And there's no institutional material addressed to this. And that's why this data exists in the way it does. It's built by hand on the margins of other job descriptions because the seam between these 2 sectors has no owner. That's why this deck matters. Without longitudinal tracking, the gap is invisible. The 76 healthcare workers get counted as stop outs. The student 1 credit short of a Hostos degree gets lost. And the pattern of Bio 111 failing to articulate across CUNY senior colleges goes unnoticed. The students who fall through don't fall through dramatically. They fall through quietly in the space that no one is responsible for. What I'm asking BTAG to consider is developing institutional infrastructure for the work that is already happening between us, a formal home for transfer, staffed, resourced, accountable, that the community college and the 4-year college both recognize as theirs. Shared data systems, auto-conferral pathways, articulation review at the course code level, reverse transfer that doesn't require a second or third application from a student we've already evaluated, because our students cross between us, and the infrastructure that serves them should cross with them. They deserve that. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.